The planet Zythera was alive with light and color. Towering crystal spires reflected the twin suns, creating rainbows across the sky. Ships of every shape and size moved gracefully through the air, leaving streaks of neon behind them. The people of Zythera, known for their intelligence and elegance, gathered in the grand arena to witness an event that only happened once every decade, the high wager competition. Princess Liara stood at the top of the arena balcony, her silver robes flowing like liquid light. Her eyes sparkled with confidence and a faint smile touched her lips. She was known across Zythera not only for her beauty but for her mind. She could solve puzzles faster than the best strategists, fly ships with precision unmatched, and read the emotions of others with incredible accuracy. "Today, I will win," she whispered to herself, her voice carrying a quiet determination. "And anyone who doubts me will see the mistake of their judgment." Below her, the arena was alive with spectators. Thousands of alien nobles and commoners filled the glowing stands, their forms shimmering with the natural luminescence of their species. Holographic screens displayed the competitors' names, abilities, and recent accomplishments. Today, Liara faced a rival unlike any she had faced before, a cunning noble from the distant system of Virelia, named Lord Kale. His reputation for cleverness and manipulation was legendary. But Liara had never faced anyone she could not outmatch. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, amplified by the resonance crystals. "Welcome, citizens of Zythera. Today we witness the most anticipated challenge in a decade. Princess Liara of House Saren faces Lord Kale of Virelia. The wager is unprecedented. Should Princess Liara lose, she must accept a consequence chosen by the Council: marriage to a human from the distant planet Earth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Humans were considered simple, untrained, and beneath the sophistication of Zytheran society. The thought of a princess marrying a human was almost unthinkable, and yet the rules of the high wager were absolute. Liara's lips curved into a small, confident smile. "A human?" she whispered, almost laughing. "I have nothing to fear." The competition began with a display of skill and intelligence. Liara and Kale faced a series of challenges, each more difficult than the last. First came the Labyrinth of Light, a complex maze that changed its paths with every step. Liara's mind raced as she calculated angles, memorized patterns, and predicted the maze's movements. She moved with grace, her footsteps silent, her focus unwavering. Kyle, however, was not easily outwitted. He adjusted quickly, using unconventional methods that even the arena's designers did not expect. At times it seemed as if the maze itself shifted in response to him, a reflection of his cunning. Liara's confidence began to flicker, though she would never show it. Next came the trial of elements, a challenge that tested reflexes, intellect, and adaptability. Streams of fire, water, and wind threatened to knock the competitors off balance, while floating platforms demanded precise calculation and perfect timing. Liara moved like a dancer, her mind analyzing every shift in pressure and motion. Kale, on the other hand, relied on improvisation, making bold leaps and using the environment in ways Liara had never considered. The crowd watched in awe as the two competitors performed feats of strategy and agility. Liara was fast, accurate, and elegant. Kyle was unpredictable, creative, and daring. At first, it seemed Liara had the advantage, and the audience cheered for her brilliance. But as the final challenge approached, a subtle shift occurred. The final test was the Puzzle of Fates, a holographic puzzle that required not only intelligence, but also intuition and risk-taking. Pieces of light floated in mid-air, moving in patterns that defied logic. The goal was to connect them in a sequence that unlocked the final portal. Many had tried and failed. Liara approached the puzzle with her usual calm. She analyzed every connection, calculated probabilities, and worked with precision. Every movement of her hands was deliberate. She thought she had seen every possibility, but Kale had something different. An instinctive creativity that could not be measured by logic alone. Where Liara planned, Kyle experimented. Where Liara calculated, Kale observed and adjusted instantly. Step by step, he unraveled the puzzle in ways that seemed chaotic but were perfectly effective. For the first time, Liara realized that she had underestimated her opponent. Her mind raced, trying to catch up. She tried a bold maneuver, one that could secure her victory if successful. But the sequence required perfect timing and absolute certainty. A single miscalculation would ruin everything, and she miscalculated. The puzzle reacted instantly, rejecting her attempt. Lights flashed red and a deep chime signaled her failure. Kale's final move completed the puzzle, unlocking the portal and securing his victory. The arena erupted with noise. Cheers, gasps, and whispers filled the air. Liara stood frozen for a moment, the weight of disbelief pressing on her. She had never lost, not once. Not in strategy, not in skill, not in intellect. And yet here she was. The high wager had been lost. The announcer's voice cut through her thoughts. Princess Liara of House Saren has lost the wager. According to the rules, she must accept the consequence chosen by the council: marriage to a human. A silence fell over the arena, thick and heavy. Even the wind seemed to pause in anticipation. Liara felt a flush of heat, not from the suns above, but from the sudden realization of what had happened. Marriage to a human, a creature she had never considered equals to her people. For a moment she felt anger and humiliation, a storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Her mind, trained to think clearly, struggled to find balance. But underneath it all, a small, stubborn curiosity flickered. Who was this human? And how would they compare to her world, her skills, her expectations? Lord Kale approached her, a polite smile on his face. "A worthy opponent, Princess," he said. "Though it seems the wager favors surprises. You will see the human is different than you expect." Liara's eyes narrowed slightly. "I have not met this human," she said, her voice steady. "I do not know their abilities or intentions, but I will not be humiliated further than I must. I will face this consequence with dignity." The Council of Elders, wise and ancient, nodded in approval. "Your dignity is required, Princess. The human will arrive within a solar cycle. Prepare yourself, for Earthlings are clever in ways you may not anticipate." As the announcement ended, Liara descended from the balcony, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She walked through the corridors of the palace, passing walls of shifting light and intricate carvings. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of her robes, but because of the reality she faced. She entered her chambers, where mirrors reflected her image. For the first time she studied herself with a different eye, a princess proud and skilled, yet humbled. And soon, she would meet someone from another world, a human, who could change everything she believed about strength, intelligence, and honor. Liara sat by the window, looking at the stars. The idea of a human seemed absurd, almost comical, yet she could not dismiss the possibility that this experience would test her in ways she had never imagined. Her mind, always sharp, began to consider strategies, not for winning a competition, but for navigating a world she had never truly explored before. She did not yet know it. But the arrival of the human would not only challenge her skills but also her pride, her assumptions, and ultimately her understanding of what it meant to be powerful. The wager was lost, yes, but the story had only begun. Outside, the twin suns dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystal towers. Light and darkness mingled, much like the uncertainty that now filled Liara's mind. She was a princess, a genius, a leader, but soon she would have to face something entirely new. A human, a creature from a distant world, and the unexpected possibilities they brought. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of curiosity grew. A small, unacknowledged excitement at the thought of meeting someone who might be her equal, or perhaps in ways she could not yet see, her superior. The journey had begun. The suns of Zithara had just risen, painting the sky with shades of gold and violet, when a sleek silver transport ship descended toward the palace. Its smooth, metallic surface reflected the twin suns, and the landing caused a small tremor that rippled through the crystal walkways. Courtiers gathered along the edges, murmuring among themselves. Many could hardly believe what was about to happen. The human had arrived. Princess Liara stood in the grand hall, her silver robes glowing softly in the light. She had prepared herself meticulously for this meeting. Every detail of her appearance, every movement, every expression had been carefully considered. She had read extensively about humans from the Council's archives, but information alone could not prepare her for the reality. The massive doors opened with a low, resonant hum. A figure stepped through. He was tall by human standards, with an upright posture that spoke of quiet confidence. His hair was dark, his eyes a deep brown that seemed to absorb the light around him. His uniform was simple yet neat, and the way he carried himself suggested competence, even in an environment entirely unfamiliar to him. Princess Liara? The human asked, his voice calm but respectful. There was no hesitation, no fear, only a curiosity that matched her own. Liara studied him carefully. Every detail mattered. His posture, his gestures, the slight tilt of his head as he scanned the grand hall. "I am Princess Liara of House Saren," she said, her voice steady. "You are Ethan, I understand." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Princess. I am honored to meet you." A hush fell over the room. Many courtiers whispered behind their hands. The idea that a human could earn respect in the palace seemed almost impossible, yet the way he spoke with clarity and confidence left a subtle impression on the gathered nobles. Liara led him to the balcony overlooking the central gardens. From above, the gardens looked like a living mosaic with floating flowers, glowing streams, and trees that bent their branches toward the light. She expected Ethan to be overwhelmed, but he only smiled slightly, taking in the view with careful attention. "This is beautiful," he said simply. "I have never seen anything like it." Liara felt a flicker of something she had not expected. Amusement. Humans were supposed to be simple, and yet he observed details with such calm appreciation, noticing the patterns in the garden, the flow of water, the symmetry of the floating flowers. It was not just beauty he saw, it was structure, order, and perhaps even understanding. "Come," Liara said, guiding him back toward the hall. "You will need to learn the customs quickly." "My world is not like yours," Ethan nodded. "I understand. I will do my best." The first challenge came almost immediately. A malfunction in one of the palace drones caused it to spiral out of control, threatening the delicate crystal structures of the hall. Courtiers panicked, unsure of how to respond. Liara moved quickly, attempting to deactivate the drone through the palace interface, but the system was unfamiliar, even to her trained hands. Ethan stepped forward. "Step aside," he said quietly. He analyzed the drone, noting its erratic patterns. With a few precise movements and calculated adjustments, he reprogrammed the drone to hover safely. The hall sighed in relief, and whispers of amazement spread through the crowd. Liara's eyes narrowed slightly. She had not expected a human to handle alien technology so swiftly. "Interesting," she said softly. Over the next several days, Liara introduced Ethan to the palace routines, ceremonies, and protocols. He adapted quickly, learning the formal gestures, the ceremonial greetings, and even the complex dining customs. While some courtiers were still skeptical, Ethan earned small nods of approval through his actions, solving minor technical issues, assisting servants with delicate tasks, and showing empathy toward the palace attendants. Despite his calm demeanor, Ethan was not trying to impress anyone. He simply observed, adapted, and acted logically when needed. Liara could not help but notice the difference between him and the aliens around her. Many of her peers relied on tradition, on rigid rules, and the weight of expectations. Ethan's thinking was flexible, creative, and independent. One afternoon, Liara took Ethan to the Hall of Mirrors, a vast chamber where light reflected endlessly, creating illusions that tested perception and intellect. She expected this to be a challenge for him, a place where humans would falter. "Walk carefully," she warned. "This hall is designed to confuse and trap those who are not attentive." Ethan smiled faintly. "I will try." Step by step, he navigated the hall, noticing subtle changes in reflection, following shadows and predicting distortions in the light. When a mirror shifted unexpectedly, he adjusted instantly, moving in ways that seemed natural yet precise. Liara watched in silent surprise. "You are surprisingly skilled," she admitted almost grudgingly. "Most humans would be lost immediately." "I guess humans survive by adapting," Ethan replied simply. "We learn to see patterns, to predict outcomes, and to act even with incomplete information." Liara considered this. His words were simple, yet they carried a truth she had never fully appreciated. Humans, despite their apparent simplicity, had a kind of intelligence that was different from Zitharan training. It was practical, instinctive, and adaptable. Their time together continued with small lessons and larger tasks. Liara taught Ethan the art of strategy using holographic simulations. She expected him to falter in complex scenarios, but he often found solutions she had not anticipated. Sometimes his creativity frustrated her. Other times it amazed her. One evening, the palace received news of a minor political disturbance in the outer sectors. Liara and Ethan were sent to assess the situation. The mission required careful observation, quick thinking, and the ability to act under pressure. The outer sector was a maze of twisting metal structures and unstable platforms. Local officials were panicked, unsure how to handle a sudden malfunction in their defense systems. Liara acted swiftly, analyzing the problem, but the systems were old and unpredictable. Ethan stepped forward, examining the devices with calm precision. He adjusted circuits, rerouted energy flows, and restored functionality faster than anyone expected. Liara watched him work, a mixture of admiration and irritation forming inside her. "I must admit," she said quietly as the system stabilized, "you are useful." Ethan looked up, smiling politely. "I am glad I could help. I am learning from you as well, Princess." For the first time, Liara felt a strange sensation, respect mixed with curiosity. This human, whom she had once dismissed as primitive, was proving himself capable in ways that mattered. Not only was he clever and resourceful, but he was also calm under pressure, patient, and willing to learn. Back at the palace, Liara reflected on the day's events. She had expected discomfort, awkwardness, perhaps even humiliation. Instead, she found herself intrigued by Ethan's abilities, his perspective, and his quiet confidence. He was not just surviving in her world, he was understanding it, adapting to it, and sometimes excelling in ways she had not anticipated. As night fell over Zithera, the twin moons casting silver light across the spires, Liara stood by the balcony once more. Ethan joined her silently, looking out at the glowing gardens below. "You have done well today," Liara said, her voice softer than usual. Ethan smiled faintly. "I am learning, and it is easier when someone guides me." Liara considered her words. She had expected a human to be a challenge to control, to guide, and perhaps to outshine her in ways that embarrassed her. Instead, she found that the experience was opening her mind, forcing her to reconsider what intelligence, skill, and courage truly meant. In the quiet of the night, Liara realized that the wager, though humiliating in name, might lead to something unexpected. This human was unlike any being she had met. He could be an ally, a partner, and perhaps in time, someone who would change her understanding of strength itself. She did not yet admit it aloud, but a small spark of curiosity had ignited inside her, a curiosity that would shape everything to come. The human had arrived, and with him, a world of possibilities. The days following Ethan's arrival were filled with lessons, ceremonies, and constant observation. Liara expected life with him to be simple and uneventful. She had imagined herself tolerating his presence until the terms of the wager were complete. Instead, she found herself navigating an unexpected challenge, living alongside someone whose mind worked in ways she could barely predict. The palace was a maze of shifting corridors, floating platforms, and rooms that rearranged themselves with the cycles of Zithera's moons. Liara's life had always followed strict routines, and she expected Ethan to struggle. Yet each day he adapted faster than she anticipated. He learned the complex greetings, avoided offending courtiers, and even managed to assist the palace engineers with minor repairs. His success in the smallest tasks annoyed her more than she cared to admit. "Ethan," she said one morning as they walked along the glittering palace balcony, "you move through this palace as if it were simple. How do you do it?" Ethan glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I notice patterns," he said simply. "I try to understand the rules, and then I act carefully." "It is not simple, Princess, just methodical." Liara raised an eyebrow. Methodical. That was one way to describe it. But method alone could not explain how he handled sudden changes, unexpected obstacles, and complex palace systems that even seasoned Zithians struggled with. Their first true test of coexistence came when Liara's council tasked them with inspecting the outer defense grids. A series of technical malfunctions had put sections of the palace shields at risk. Normally, this would be Liara's responsibility alone, but the council wanted to observe how she and the human worked together. The journey to the outer grids was treacherous. Platforms floated over deep energy chasms, and automated defenses fired arcs of light to scan for intruders. Liara moved gracefully, her body trained and precise. Ethan followed with careful steps, observing and learning quickly. When they reached the main control station, the problem became clear. A surge in the energy core had caused cascading errors through the grid. Liara immediately began analyzing the system. pulling holographic displays into the air and tracing circuits with her fingers. Ethan, meanwhile, observed quietly, noting patterns in the energy flow that were not immediately obvious. "You're focusing on the wrong node," he said after a few moments. "If you adjust the flow here first, it will stabilize the other sections automatically." Liara paused, surprised by his insight. Most humans would have panicked or blindly followed instructions. Ethan, however, had observed, understood, and proposed a solution she had overlooked. Together they worked in silence. Liara adjusted the energy grids with precision, while Ethan suggested small modifications to optimize the flow. Within minutes, the system stabilized, and the threat to the palace shields was eliminated. "You are clever," Liara admitted, almost reluctantly. "I underestimated your abilities." Ethan simply smiled. "I am learning from you as well, Princess. Your understanding of this technology is remarkable." As they returned to the palace, Liara found herself thinking deeply. This human, whom she had once dismissed as simple and inferior, had proven himself capable under pressure. He did not have the training of a Zithian noble, but he had something equally valuable: adaptability, quick thinking, and a calm mind. The following days tested them in other ways. Liara introduced Ethan to Zitharan etiquette, a complex web of gestures, rituals, and subtle cues that could offend or please in equal measure. Many of the gestures required precise timing, a delicate balance of light and shadow, and an understanding of alien social hierarchy. Ethan struggled at first, but he observed carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and practiced diligently. In private, he stumbled, mispronounced words, and sometimes caused minor accidents with floating objects. Yet in public, he performed flawlessly, earning quiet nods of approval from the court. Liara could not help but notice the contrast between him and her peers. While most nobles relied on arrogance, reputation, or inherited status, Ethan relied on observation, logic, and sincerity. He did not seek praise, yet it came naturally. One evening, as the twin moons cast silver light over the palace gardens, Liara decided to test him further. She created a simulation of a crisis scenario in the strategy chamber, a holographic battle that required them to defend a vital energy core from multiple attacks. "You must follow my plan exactly," she said. "Deviation could cause failure." Ethan nodded. "I will follow your instructions, but I may also suggest adjustments if needed." Liara frowned slightly. "Adjustments are risky." The simulation began. Holographic attackers moved with speed and unpredictability. Liara issued commands guiding Ethan through the movements, formations, and defenses. When an unexpected attack came from a blind spot, Ethan reacted instantly, redirecting resources and reinforcing weak points. Liara felt a mix of frustration and admiration. His actions were not just correct, they were innovative, creative, and effective. Where she relied on precise calculation, he relied on intuition guided by observation. Together, their strategies were flawless, surpassing anything Liara had achieved alone. After the simulation ended, she turned to him. "You are better at this than I expected." "I only act differently," Ethan replied calmly. "Your plan is strong. I only adjust when necessary." Liara did not reply. She felt a strange mixture of pride, irritation, and curiosity. She had never met someone who could challenge her intellect without arrogance, who could adapt without training, and who could think in ways she had never considered. Their coexistence was not without conflict. Small disagreements arose. The way Ethan organized his quarters, the way he interacted with servants, or even his casual approach to certain formalities. Liara found herself frustrated by his different ways of thinking, yet she could not deny their effectiveness. Each disagreement became a lesson, each challenge an opportunity to understand him better and, perhaps, to understand herself. One afternoon, they were tasked with resolving a communication failure between the palace and a distant outpost. The alien interface was designed to respond only to trained Zithians, but Ethan approached it differently. Instead of following protocol, he examined the patterns, tried multiple combinations, and quickly deciphered the system. Within minutes, communication was restored. Liara watched silently, a rare smile appearing on her lips. She had expected difficulty, yet Ethan's human ingenuity had prevailed again. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "And you are patient," Ethan replied with a faint smile. I could not have done this without your guidance. The truth settled slowly into Liara's mind. Humans were not inferior. They were different. Their strength lay in their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to remain calm under pressure. Her assumptions, her pride, and her judgment of him had all been challenged, and she was learning to see beyond appearances. That evening, as the palace quieted, Liara stood on the balcony, watching Ethan assist a group of palace attendants with floating containers of supplies. He moved with ease, but he also paused to ensure no one stumbled, offering quiet words of encouragement. Liara realized something she had not expected. She respected him. Not as a creature beneath her, not as someone to tolerate, but as an equal in skill, thought, and determination. The human she had once dismissed was proving himself worthy of admiration, and somewhere deep inside, Liara felt a small flicker of something else: curiosity, excitement, and perhaps the faintest hint of trust. This human, her supposed punishment, was becoming someone she could rely on, someone who challenged her in ways no other being had. The trials of coexistence had begun, and both of them were learning, not just about each other, but about the true meaning of strength, intelligence, and partnership. Liara did not yet know what the future would bring, but one thing was clear: life with Ethan was already changing her world, and perhaps in ways she had not imagined it would change her as well. The morning light bathed the palace in a golden glow, but the serenity of Zithra was about to be shattered. Alarms rang through the corridors, their deep tones echoing off crystal walls. Courtiers and guards rushed to their stations. Something was wrong. Something serious. Liara stood at the balcony, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the palace grounds. The alert had been sudden and unexpected. Her instincts, honed through years of training and leadership, told her that this was not a simple malfunction or minor disturbance. This was deliberate. Ethan appeared beside her, calm as ever. "What's happening?" he asked. "A faction within the nobility," Liara said, her voice tense. "They plan to challenge the council and take control of the palace. It is more dangerous than anything we have faced so far." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "Then we stop them." Together they moved through the palace, coordinating with guards and officials. Liara gave precise commands, directing patrols, securing vital areas, and organizing defensive positions. Ethan followed closely, observing the systems, noting weaknesses and suggesting practical solutions. Where the palace relied on protocol, he relied on logic and adaptability. Their first challenge came in the central security grid. A group of rogue nobles had infiltrated the network, attempting to override the palace's automated defenses. Liara immediately began countermeasures, deploying barriers and rerouting power. But the systems were complicated and the attackers were skilled. Ethan leaned over her shoulder, studying the network patterns. "If we adjust the secondary nodes here and here," he said, pointing to sections of the holographic display, "we can isolate the intruders without shutting down the entire system." Liara hesitated for a moment, then followed his instructions. The plan worked perfectly. The intruders were trapped in a containment field, unable to reach critical systems. Courtiers whispered in astonishment. Humans, they had believed, were too simple to understand Zithran technology. Yet here was one acting faster and more accurately than most nobles could manage. The battle was not only technological. The rogue faction sent squads of elite fighters into the palace corridors. Liara and Ethan moved quickly, coordinating defenses. Liara's combat training was exceptional, and she moved with precision and grace, deflecting attacks and directing guards. Ethan, while not trained in the same ways, used observation and intuition to anticipate moves, block entrances, and guide Liara's forces. At one point, a squad attempted to flank Liara's position through a hidden passage. Ethan noticed the shadows first. "To your left," he warned calmly. Liara spun, intercepting the attackers before they could strike. His human reflexes and sharp instincts had saved her, and she felt a pang of respect, mixed with something more complicated. The palace became a scene of organized chaos. Alarms rang, lights flashed, and holographic screens displayed the movements of both allies and enemies. Through it all, Liara and Ethan operated as a single unit. She directed strategy, he offered solutions, and together they stayed ahead of the rogue faction's plans. During a brief pause, they stood back to back in the command chamber, catching their breath. Liara glanced at Ethan, noting the calm focus in his eyes. "You think differently," she said, almost in wonder. Ethan shrugged lightly. I act based on what I observe. I adjust when necessary. You act on your training and your instincts. Together it seems to work. Liara allowed herself a small smile. Yes, it does. The final challenge came when the faction's leader attempted to breach the palace's central core, where the energy supply and control systems were located. If he succeeded, the palace and possibly the entire city would be vulnerable. Liara and Ethan reached the core at the same time. The leader was waiting, confident and armed. He sneered at the human beside her. "Do you really think a human can stop me?" he demanded. Ethan stepped forward calmly. "I don't think. I act." The battle was intense. Liara's training allowed her to deflect attacks, use precise maneuvers, and maintain control. Ethan, though not trained in combat, used strategy and quick thinking. He created traps, redirected energy flows, and used the environment to their advantage. Step by step, they forced the faction leader back. Each move coordinated seamlessly. At the climax, Liara created an opening and Ethan acted instantly, disabling the leader's weapon system with a clever adjustment to the energy controls. The rogue noble was captured and the palace secured. Courtiers erupted in applause, astonished at the efficiency and bravery displayed by both the princess and the human. In the quiet aftermath, Liara and Ethan stood in the central hall, surveying the results of the battle. The palace was intact, the nobles subdued, and the city safe. Liara's mind was racing, not with strategy this time, but with thought about Ethan himself. "You were remarkable," she said softly. "I underestimated you," Ethan smiled faintly. "I only did what I could, and I followed your lead when needed." Liara shook her head slightly, realizing that his actions were more than following. They complemented hers. His perspective, his creativity, his courage. They had turned the tide of what could have been a disaster. For the first time, she felt something she had never expected: genuine respect for a human being. Later, in the privacy of her chambers, Liara reflected on the day. Her mind wandered back to the wager, the rules and the expectations of Zitharan society. She had expected humiliation, discomfort, perhaps even failure. Instead, she had discovered something new, a partnership built on trust, skill, and intelligence that transcended species. Ethan knocked lightly and entered, carrying a tray of refreshments. "You should rest," he said. "You have done more today than most could handle in a week." Liara studied him, noting the quiet confidence in his demeanor. "You too," she said. "You have exceeded any expectations I had." "I only acted," he replied simply. "You directed?" "I followed." And together it worked. Liara realized that this statement, though simple, captured the essence of what had happened. Humans, she thought, were not inferior. They were different. Their strengths were in ways that Zithians did not always understand: adaptability, intuition, creativity, and calm courage. Ethan had demonstrated all of these in the face of danger. For the first time since the wager, Liara did not feel humiliated. She felt something stronger: a quiet admiration, respect, and perhaps the beginning of trust. This human who had arrived as her punishment was proving himself indispensable, not just to her, but to the palace, the city, and perhaps even the future of Zithara. The next morning, as the palace recovered from the chaos, Liara and Ethan walked through the gardens. The air was fresh, the streams glowed softly, and flowers floated in gentle arcs. For a moment it felt peaceful again, a contrast to the intensity of the previous day. Liara turned to Ethan. "I have been thinking," she said. "Humans, I may have judged them too quickly. You have shown me that they can be formidable in ways we do not always understand." Ethan smiled faintly. "I think that is true for all beings, Princess. Strength is not always obvious. It comes in many forms." Liara nodded, feeling a sense of clarity. The wager, the human, the challenges, they were all part of a larger lesson. Not about punishment, but about perspective, trust, and the value of collaboration. The palace was safe, the rogue faction subdued, and Liara's opinion of humans, and of Ethan, had changed. She realized that what she had thought was a punishment was actually an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to see beyond her own world. As the twin moons rose over the spires of Zithara, casting silver light over the gardens and halls, Liara felt something she had not expected: hope. Hope that with Ethan by her side, they could face any challenge, overcome any obstacle. and perhaps even change the way her people viewed humans forever. The battle had tested them, and they had emerged stronger together. Liara knew that the future would hold more trials, more challenges, and perhaps more surprises. But for the first time, she was ready to face them. Not alone, but with a partner she could trust, respect, and perhaps even admire in ways she had never imagined. The human had arrived as a punishment. Yet through courage, intelligence, and determination, he had become something far greater, an equal, a partner, and a force that could change everything. And somewhere deep in her heart, Liara knew that the story of the Wager and the human was far from over. The palace of Zithara had returned to a calm, orderly state, yet the air was charged with anticipation. The events of recent days had changed everything. Alliances, perceptions, and even the understanding of what strength truly meant. Liara walked through the grand hall, her robes glimmering in the soft light, but her mind was not on appearances. It was on the human who had arrived as her punishment, Ethan, and the journey they had shared. The council had convened a special meeting. Courtiers, nobles, and citizens filled the hall, whispering among themselves. Many were eager to see the princess and the human together. Some still doubted that a human could hold their place among Zithian society, but Liara knew better. Ethan followed her, calm as always, carrying himself with quiet dignity. He did not need to speak to earn respect. His actions over the past days had spoken louder than words. Liara stepped forward and addressed the gathering. "Citizens of Zithara, I have long been proud of our traditions, our intellect, and our history, but recent events have shown me that strength and wisdom are not limited to bloodlines or species. They can be found where we least expect them." A hush fell over the hall. Every eye was on her. "I speak of this human," Liara continued, turning toward Ethan. "He arrived not as a noble, not as someone trained in our ways, but as a creature from another world. And yet in his actions, his courage, and his mind, he has proven himself capable in ways that surpass expectations. He has saved our palace, our citizens, and perhaps even the honor of our people." Ethan bowed slightly but said nothing. He had never sought recognition. His satisfaction came from solving problems, helping others, and proving that humans were capable of more than appearances suggested. The council members exchanged glances. For generations they had looked down on humans as simple, untrained, and inferior. Yet here was one standing among them, respected by the princess herself, demonstrating intelligence, adaptability, and courage beyond most Zithians. Liara's gaze softened as she looked at him. "I have learned much from him, and I believe our people can learn as well. Let his example remind us that strength comes in many forms and that wisdom can appear in places we least expect." A quiet murmur spread through the crowd, followed by nods of agreement. Respect for Ethan was growing, and with it, a new understanding of humans across Zithara. After the ceremony, Liara and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens. The glowing streams reflected the twin moons, and floating flowers trailed softly in the evening breeze. It was peaceful, a moment of calm after the storm of the past days. "You have changed many minds today," Liara said, her voice gentle. "Not only mine, but those of the council and the citizens." "I am grateful," Ethan smiled faintly. "I did what I could. You guided me. Your trust allowed me to act. Without that, none of this would have been possible." Liara paused, considering his words. "I have judged too quickly in the past. Humans. I thought we were so different, so unequal. But I see now that courage, intelligence, and adaptability are universal. You have shown me that." Ethan's calm eyes met hers. "We all have strengths. Yours is strategy, leadership, and perception. Mine is different, but it is still valuable. Together, we can accomplish much more than alone." For the first time, Liara felt a true sense of partnership, not of obligation, not of duty, but of respect and mutual admiration. The wager, the punishment she had dreaded, had transformed into something unexpected, a relationship built on equality and shared purpose. In the following weeks, life in the palace took on a new rhythm. Liara and Ethan worked together, guiding projects, resolving disputes, and improving palace systems. His human ingenuity introduced new ideas that even the most experienced Zithians had never considered. He suggested energy optimizations, new strategies for defense, and creative ways to manage palace logistics. Liara implemented them, learning from him even as she guided him in return. Their collaboration became a model for the rest of Zithera. Nobles began to reconsider their assumptions about humans, and students at the Palace Academy studied Ethan's methods as an example of ingenuity and problem-solving. He had arrived as an outsider, but his contributions were changing the culture itself. One evening, Liara and Ethan stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The spires of Zithera glowed under the twin moons, the streams of light reflecting the vibrancy and innovation of their civilization. "You know," Liara said thoughtfully, "I never imagined a human could impact our world like this. I thought you would be simple, unskilled, and irrelevant." Ethan shook his head. "I am not irrelevant, Princess, but I could not have done anything alone. We all need guidance, understanding, and cooperation. Strength alone is never enough." Liara smiled softly, feeling warmth she had not expected. "You have taught me much, more than I can say, about humans, about partnership, and perhaps even about myself." Ethan glanced at her, his expression calm but sincere. "And you have taught me, Princess, about leadership, strategy, and the value of guidance, about respect, courage, and trust." For a long moment they stood in silence, observing the glowing city below. The past, her wager, her loss, her assumptions, felt distant, replaced by the reality of what they had achieved together. The palace held a grand celebration in honor of their success. Nobles and citizens from across Zithera attended, honoring Liara, Ethan, and the unity they represented. Stories of Ethan's ingenuity and bravery spread quickly, reshaping perceptions of humans throughout the planet. During the celebration, Liara raised a toast. "To courage, intelligence, and partnership," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "And to seeing beyond appearances, to recognize the value in unexpected places." Ethan stood beside her, humble yet proud. "To learning from one another," he added simply. The crowd cheered, and the atmosphere was filled with a sense of possibility. The story of the wager, once feared as humiliation, had become an example of growth, respect, and unity. Humans were no longer seen as simple or inferior. They were recognized as capable, creative, and adaptable, a force that could stand alongside the best of Zithera. As the celebration ended, Liara and Ethan walked through the quiet palace gardens. The air was cool, and the glowing plants cast soft light on their path. Liara looked at him, her thoughts clear and her heart steady. "You came into my life as a challenge," she said softly. "But you have become so much more than that. I respect you, Ethan, and I am grateful for everything you have shown me." Ethan looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "And I respect you, Princess. You have guided me, trusted me, and allowed me to contribute. I am honored to have stood by your side." Liara realized in that moment that the wager was no longer important. The punishment, the loss, the expectations, they were shadows compared to the reality they had built. Together they had proven something far greater, that courage, intelligence, and partnership could transcend worlds, species, and assumptions. The twin moons reflected in their eyes as they stood together. A princess and a human, equals in purpose and spirit. They had faced challenges, overcome adversity, and learned from each other. And the future, vast and full of possibilities, awaited them, together. Liara smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. "The story of the wager ends not in punishment but in respect." Ethan nodded. "And perhaps in new beginnings." For the first time since the wager was announced, Liara felt a sense of peace and excitement. Humans were no longer beneath her world. They were a partner in it. And in Ethan she had discovered something rare. A mind as sharp as hers, a heart as steadfast, and a presence that could stand alongside hers as an equal. The stars twinkled above Zithera, reflecting the glow of possibility, hope, and achievement. The human had arrived as a punishment, but he had left a legacy of courage, ingenuity, and mutual respect. Together, they had changed not only each other but the perception of humans across the planet. And somewhere deep inside, Liara knew that this was only the beginning of their story.